If you're anything like me, you probably work from a lot of different places in your house or your studio, like the couch, or maybe you're outside at a park, but you are very rarely sitting at your desk unless you absolutely have to be, which is why I love today's sponsor so much. Today's sponsor is AstroPad. We're so thankful that they're sponsoring today's episode, and we are obsessed with the dartboard. The dartboard is this new sort of like portable desk for your iPad, and it basically means I can now work from anywhere without needing to immediately go have a chiropractor fix my back from hunching over, basically like a troll. It's a 10 out of 10 for us. The dartboard is definitely changing the way we work and how comfortable we are while we're doing it, so be sure to check one out today. Thank you so much to AstroPad for sponsoring today's episode. Oh my, we really matched today.
Yeah, we really did. And our sweaters, although I have no business wearing a sweater because it's
get out of
like
here.
70s today here in Texas.
There's snow on the ground for me, so I feel like I'm allowed.
I'm looking this way because I've been watching more and more TikTok and it's just getting into my head.
Wait, what do you mean? What's getting into your head?
Like the way that people look in the world. I don't see a lot of people on a day-to-day basis, so TikTok is like my view of
fashion
in the world.
So you're getting a lot of your attire style from what you're seeing other people wearing on TikTok.
I'm not influenced to the point where I'm not going to be myself at all anymore, but I'm just learning what stuff is like very much dating me as the millennial that I am. And I'm trying to update it in ways that feels authentic to me, I guess.
This is actually a great segue. There is a woman, I'll try and find her and put her in the show notes, on TikTok who does like updating millennial outfits. And I really love it because you do the same thing for so long and it starts to feel like, I'd like to update it. I don't want to go too far. She gives these little ways where you could swap. Like if you swap this jean, it all of a sudden changes the look. And it's really interesting to watch and then figure out, do I like that? Do I feel comfortable in the thing I'm wearing? And there's like a really fine line between watching so much and in digesting so much content or consuming so much that you get confused on what you really like. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about style.
That's awesome because I did not intend this, but it has worked out so very well. Actually, you never heard that. I intended that this whole time.
I also feel like this is the first time I'm personally coming with no to a podcast episode where I'm like, I don't have any questions for you because you're not a guest. You live here.
This is something that we kind of know a little something about. We are writing a book on the subject at the moment. So
we know a little bit.
So yeah, I mean, we're honestly on the journey of discovery while we are writing this book as well. We know a lot about the journey of finding your creative identity and finding your style because we've been through it. So we know it from the actual artistic experience side. It's our number one question that we get from our students in our webinars and our courses and the current friends. We're constantly seeing people say, how do I find a style? Do I need a style? What should my style be? Because I feel like I like so many things and I can't narrow it down. So that we're writing a whole book about it, but we're going to do this podcast episode as a little truncated version to wet your whistle, if you will.
I'm just really excited to have an opportunity to talk to you. I've been loving having guests on the show, but I know we talk 18 times a day, but it's nice to just see what comes out. Who knows what this episode has in store.
I'm really holding in my reference that I want to make about, I want to talk about poop right there. When you say, wait,
oh my God, we're like 3 minutes into the episode. Takes a turn every time. Okay, so something I do want to say is that, so it's the holiday season right now when we're recording this. There's a lot of consumerism. There's a lot of buying things. There's a lot of wanting things. There's a lot of making lists. And I just want to say, I've been on a social media. Drag them twice, baby. I've been off of the app that starts with an I. I don't know if we're allowed to say on TikTok. Everyone's always like, the other app. Okay, anyway, So on Instagram, I've been taking a little break from a mental healthy to avoid a mentee bee. And I'm really glad it's coinciding with the holiday season because I feel like the purchases I want to make, the things I am like wanting to treat myself with, because we don't do a lot of gift exchanges where like we got it down to a science. The things that I'm like looking to purchase or buy for other people is really coming from my own ideas right now. And I feel like it was a really good time. What is happening? What's happening?
Oh my gosh. I don't know what that was, but we've saw it once before with one of our guests when she said the word idea. Let's see if it does it for me. My own
I
ideas.
got an idea. I got an idea. Idea,
No.
idea, idea,
So
idea.
this graphic bubble just came out of her head. I've seen this once before. I kind of forgot that it ever happened. We're inside Riverside. That's where we record our stuff. Like, somebody from Riverside, please reach out and tell us what just happened.
So, or it's a sign.
Okay. Like a positive
It's a
sign?
sign. I don't know. But
Okay.
this happened on FaceTime with my mom the other day, and we like really needed a sign, and we got it. My whole screen turned into balloons popping. Like, you know, when you send someone a message on
Yeah.
iPhone
Is
where
it
you say
because you
happy
said
birthday?
something celebratory?
No, we tried to repeat it. It was so weird, and we were like, we're taking this as a sign.
What
Anyway,
is happening?
also I had lipstick on my teeth, I just realized.
I was
Um,
wondering. I almost said something, but I didn't. So
yeah, I
sorry.
did. Thanks a lot. You're supposed to be the one person who will tell me. Back on track here. Oh, so all the decisions I'm making right now during this holiday season are coming from a place of like things I actually want or I'm feeling like I could use or that would be helpful. That's been really, really enjoyable. I know that if I was just scrolling, like doom scrolling, granted, I am on TikTok. I'm not completely living in a bubble, but I know that if I was on Instagram right now, just doom scrolling, I would be wanting a lot of things and being really confused on what do I actually want and what am I wanting because other people are influencing me to want it. Which is like, that's fine. That's great to be influenced. But I think during this season when it can feel really overwhelming, I've really enjoyed that. So, mental note to myself, do it again. I would do it again.
Great. 10 out of 10. Yeah, I haven't been spending that much time on the I app. Are we speaking in code now? But I
We
have
can, we're good.
been spending lots more time on the T app because it just has a lot more funny animals and little fashion tips and things and is a lot more of an enjoyable place to be. People aren't wrong. Instagram is a different vibe, that's for sure.
I think it comes with that pressure. And I think we feel that pressure to like show up as this curated,
Yeah.
having your style completely nailed down. And that's one of the reasons why when people are posting their work to Instagram, they're like, well, if you keep scrolling, I need to archive everything because my style has changed. But really,
Mm,
it's an evolution. And the
yeah.
lifespan of a post, let's say it's like your last nine, even now, I feel like people aren't on your feed as much. They're on just whatever content is right in front of them. And so it's an evolution. Like it's the documentation. It's like a sketchbook. If you went back to the beginning, you're going to watch and see the evolution of your work. And so I think just alleviating that pressure what has drawn me to consume more on TikTok and to create more on there. But I think there's ways that we can all alleviate that outside of the world of social media.
Great. So, why don't we delve into this subject by talking about how our personal styles have evolved? And obviously, they're still evolving, they're still changing. Everybody's constant work and progress. And it would be really boring if we stopped at a style and we were like, there, we're done for the rest of our life. That's it. We're just making art that looks like this. And that would be hella boring. So, yeah, let's talk about Ilana, where did you kind of start in your aesthetic inclinations or like start seeing sparks of some kind of style situation going on? Or what were your like early initial feelings around that?
How early are we talking?
It can be as early as you want. Literally, you can be like, oh, as a child,
Mm.
I would see the patterns on my mom's clothes.
Mm.
And
Oh, I feel like past. No, I'm going to go more current because I feel like I have done a lot of the work to like revisit some of those things and find my confidence again after periods of ebbing and flowing. And what I've done recently is taken some time to evaluate the people who inspire me, the things that I get really excited about, whether it's home decor, whether it's clothing, whether it's graphic design, and figure out what the common threads are. And something I've noticed is that I really admire and like looking at bright colors. But when it comes to my own work or my own tendencies, whether it's home decor or clothes, not necessarily in my work, because when you're working with clients, they're not usually like, keep it neutral. Okay. It's really different what I take in versus what I put out, I guess. And a couple of common themes I've noticed are that I really like things that are easy to digest. And we talked about this recently was that my sister's sort of a maximalist in so many ways. And I love that about her. I go over to her house and I'm like, oh, it's so cool. You have all this stuff we can play with. You have all this cool art on the walls. I love it so much. But I wouldn't thrive in that same environment because it's like too much stimulation for me. And so that's one of the things I've been focusing on now as I'm working on new pieces is how do I like balance the bold, bright, fun with also not wanting to feel overwhelmed because that sort of thing does overwhelm me if there's too much going on. I think the condensed version of that is that I like taking really simple things and making them to the max. Like, how can
Yes.
I
Doing
max
the
out
most
being
with the
simple?
least. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm really interested in. And as I go back to childhood projects I used to do, I see that theme running through pretty much everything I've done. And I'm also finding other ways to apply it to my life beyond my design sense. I feel like that was a very convoluted answer.
No, I think it's great. And it is a convoluted answer when you're talking about your style and your influences and all of that. I mean, it's definitely never going to be wrapped up in a neat little bow. I mean, we can try and condense it down to like a general couple of sentences when we're trying to express quickly, like on our website, what kind of aesthetic we have or what kind of art we want to make for people. But it's a bigger conversation than that. I mean, we're writing a whole book
Yeah.
on it. And it's really like we've started writing a little bit of the book, and we kind of mentioned that everything that goes in, like all your influences, all your experiences, all your ways of perceiving the world, kind of go into this bubbling pot cauldron situation and make like the stew or the you smoothie. So it's really just like
Mm,
this completely unique blend to you that's absolutely nobody else could ever arrive at, which is really, really cool. But a lot of what your you smoothie comes out as depends on the ingredients that you put in.
yeah.
And for me, my smoothie is a lot different from your smoothie in
Oh,
that
yeah.
in that you're always looking for making the most out of the least, and I'm really, really drawn to the details, the ornaments, the excess, the
Mm,
maximalism. And I've always also seen details as like a love letter from the artist. They're like, look how much time I spent on this. I love just thinking about when I'm looking at a piece that's super rich in details. I just dive into the artist's mind or try to and imagine their process and their mindset while they were creating all those things. And I love when there's like hidden details and more and more and more for me to unravel. A big pivotal moment for me in developing my style or understanding the aesthetics that I was really drawn to was in maybe my sophomore year in college. And my design history professor got to the portion of history about Art Nouveau. And it's like one of those moments where you remember exactly where you were and you got chills
mm.
down your spine and goosebumps. And like my jaw was just on the floor because I'd never seen Art Nouveau before, or I'd never seen it presented in this way. Maybe I'd seen, obviously, you see influences all the time, but this was my first time just seeing Art Nouveau after Art Nouveau piece laid out in front of me. And I was just like, on the biggest high. It was so
Mm.
weird. Like, I've never felt that way about art before. Obviously, I like it a lot because I'm an artist, but this was like something
I
else. And
hope
I was
so.
like, okay, what is it that I'm drawn to? And it's like all the details, all the sinewy curves, all the organic nature, all the details just like buried in these little ornamental illustrations. Like, I was obsessed, and I still am.
So I have a parallel to that. And it's funny because it was around the same time, which we always find these little moments. As a kid, so my sister was an artist, my grandma was a watercolor artist, my mom is a watercolor artist. My sister's three-dimensional. So she's like glass blowing, and I always thought it was so cool. And I was obsessed with pop art, like
Mm.
Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol. And those made sense to me. When I went to college and I had just transferred into the graphic design, or I transferred schools and I took my first typography class. I remember the five kids I was with, we were all transfer students. We were in like the basement of the rinky dinky building that needs all the other buildings are so cool. The arts building is awful. We had to make our own set of letters on the computer digitally, that thing we use every day. I was like, oh my God, I'm in the right place because I had transferred schools. So I had been in an art program at a different school. And I was like, this is not, I don't like this that much. A lot of figure drawing, which is like great. All those things are foundational. But during my first type class, I was like, oh my God, it all makes sense. And I do remember what you're describing, but on such a simpler scale. And it just made sense to me. And it's funny because, like I was saying, I can look at something from Art Nouveau, or I can look at my sister's maximalism, like her bedroom and all these patterns and things. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I don't think my brain notices the details the way I will see that there's a lot of detail, but I won't be like, look at that little tiny thing. And whenever I would work on a project, I would be like, wow, I did that so fast, and wonder, why am I so fast at this? And I think it's because I'm not looking at those details. Like, I am zoomed out way farther than you are. That's not wrong or bad. It's just that we process and create in such different ways.
Well, it's funny because when you start looking at these things that appear in your aesthetic inclinations and that appear in your art output, you start to realize that they're in your personality as well. And they're in the way that you work, and they're in the way that you think about your relationships and the way that you interact with people. And it's sometimes when people are trying to understand what their artistic identity is, they get lost in thinking like, oh, these are all these disparate things that I like, and I do all these things in different ways, and how do I marry all of them? But really, you can start to see so many through lines like what Ilana and I are talking about, because this is how we work in our business as well. We're talking about she's zoomed out, I'm zoomed in. That's exactly what we bring to our business partnership as well. So if you start paying attention to these things and you're like, oh, I'm really drawn to this particular history period, why is that? And start pulling out words, pulling out reasons why you might be drawn to those things. Are those based in experiences or things that make you feel nostalgic to your past? Are those things that come out in other parts of your life? It's so interesting to start to weave that story together and start to see it unfold.
Yeah, I totally agree. All the influences, all the ways we can find the crossover between, I've been finding this a lot lately with my wardrobe, with my home decor, is like the way that I design or the things that I'm attracted to or excited by. There's just so many parallels. And that's one of the reasons why your style is already there. Sure, it's going to evolve and refine because you're going to understand it more. It's almost like you can use voice or style sort of interchangeably. And it's like, you have a voice. It's just, do you hear it loud enough? Do you want to make it louder? Do you want to change the volume? Do you want to add some bass? I don't know. Is that it? Does that work? I don't know my audio terms as well as you do, but I think it's like, whatever metaphor you want to use. Is it a pot of chili and you're stirring all the ingredients? There's already a soup. It just might not be exactly to your taste buds yet. Or it's
might need a little
the
spice.
volume and making sure. You might need a couple spices. You might change it up over the years. Every time you make it, it might be a little different. I mean, I could keep going with this analogy here, but the same with the volume of your voice. You have a voice. Are you using it in the way you want it to be used? And are people hearing it the way that you're intending? And it's just like a constant refinement. And when you're able to look back and like recognize those patterns, it does give you a lot more confidence to be able to say like, I don't do everything, but when I do something, here are the attributes I bring to it.
Yeah, I certainly don't do everything. That's for sure. But we all got to lean into the stuff that we do really well, and even lean into the stuff that we don't do well.
Oof, I could talk about those for a long time.
Being really aware of that is super important. But I think the most important thing when you're looking for your voice is the search for authenticity and for making it be a real honest reflection of who you are and not what you think you're supposed to be or do or look like or whatever it is. It's back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, it's so easy as an artist, especially one that's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, to see so many people doing something a certain way and think like, oh, that's the way to do it. Or, oh, you get followers if you do this. Or maybe we just have like a preconceived notion of what we think an artist is supposed to be or reflect, or even when we're allowed to call ourselves an artist, like you have to get to X point. So I think constantly challenging those beliefs when we start to see something come up in our brain and be like, oh, you can't do this because you got to do this. That's a red flag. And that means, okay, let me look at this thought and examine it and think, what is this roadblock? Is this because I genuinely don't want to go in this direction because it doesn't feel authentic? Or is it because I feel pressured by something to be this idea of what I'm supposed to be?
I have this tidbit I want to share.
Tidbit Tuesday. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Sure.
It's a Friday.
Tidbit Tuesday. But when people are listening, it could be a Tuesday. So. Or stop listening, come back on Tuesday. No,
I'm just trying to come up with more of those office ladies style interjections. What are they called? Like when you have like a little tune or like a special segment?
Yeah, like the sound effect
Angela's
snippet.
digital clutter. Yeah. Okay, go
um,
ahead.
you made me lose my train of thought.
Damn it. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so when you see someone and you're like, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be done. That was something you said. So you see someone and you're like, okay, they did this and it worked. So that must be what I need to do to see the success they're seeing. Hold up, insert the song. Hold up. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. You know what? Okay, that
Are
no,
you
nope.
because I'm thinking of
Okay,
the Avril Lavigne one. Hold up, take a
it
look
doesn't
at
matter.
me and you'll see I'm for real. You feel what only I can feel, and if that don't appeal to you, let me know. Cause I flow better when my colors show. And that's the way it has to be. Honestly, cause creativity could never bloom in my room. I throw it all away before I so don't go me with a compromise. Hang up the phone. I got a backbone stronger than yours. Na 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 yeah. Na na na. No?
Nobody knows what you're talking about.
Hey, Avril. That's
Wow.
Avril. Were you
Yes,
not
of
a real
course. We
Avril
all
fan?
apparently not.
Well,
Wow. Well, thank you for gracing us with your presence today, Avril. When
somebody
Katie's
who
back, let
listened
us
to
know.
me, somebody who listened out there knows and was singing along, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They certainly did. Thank you, though. That was really beautiful.
Sure.
When you see someone and you say, they're doing this, it's working for them, that must be what I need to do, you are dismissing the one most important thing. And that is the reason it's working for them is because they are them. It's the combination of all the things. It's not just the art. It's not just the caption. It is the whole entire package. Nobody owns one style and nobody can just do the exact same thing. Like Katie and I could post the exact same things to our feed, or we could share the same exact images on our website. And because our language of who we are and the way we express ourselves in other ways, it will just never be the same story. You can take notes and say, like, well, I really like this about what they're doing. And it seems like people resonated with it. Scratch the resonated part. Figure out what people are resonate when you are sharing something. What do you want to talk about? What makes you align with someone else? What parts of other people's work do you resonate with? And you can like pull those pieces of, okay, I resonate with this. I love these colors. I love this, and put it all together for your stew. But you can't just look at someone else's work and say, this is working for them. So therefore it must work for me also. You're missing the human connection behind it, I feel like. And I've done that too. I've looked at people and said, well, they're talking about, or they're posting that once a day at this time, and they're always sharing these 3 color palettes. Like that is not the formula. There is no formula.
Yeah.
It's that authentic piece that can't be replaced. So if you've felt those feelings, I mean, join the club. We felt them too. I get it. But it's just not taking into consideration the whole picture. And hopefully we can share some tools and how we do help amplify that authentic piece and bring it into our work.
Before we go further, I want to answer one of the questions that we get the most, like a sub question of finding your style is why? Why is that important? And I feel so confined by that idea. And I'm really scared because I like a million different things and I want to experiment and I want to try. And that's the reason that I became an artist. So why are you telling me that I have to do one thing? Totally hear ya. I think that is a very common misconception. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and kind of where the lines and delineations are. And I think there's a big distinction here between the importance of finding your creative identity and finding a style. I think that those are two different things. I think finding your creative identity is understanding who you are as a whole creative person. And within that, can be somebody who tries all sorts of different things and is a human being that likes to experiment and that changes and ebbs and flows. When we're talking about a singular style, that kind of sounds like, oh, I'm just sticking to drawing in black and white charcoal. That's restrictive, and I totally understand why that would be scary. But I think we need to shift that language a little bit. So instead of saying, we want you to find a style and stick to it so people know what you do. While it is helpful to have like bodies of work that are stylized in a similar way and are easy to recognize and pinpoint, I think the larger, more important thing is to really get a grasp on your creative identity and figure out how to convey that.
Okay, I just took a note of something. I'm going to run it past you. Maybe you can take what I heard and then mix it up and spit it back out.
Please.
But instead of saying, like, what you said was, instead of finding your style that you're going to use forever or whatever, I think you could ask what elements make up your style, or what elements make up your creative, what did you say? Creative identity.
Yeah.
Because like we said at the beginning, we talked about like the themes we saw, and Katie was really influenced by Art Nouveau. So in some way, a lot of her work will be inspired by something nouveau. That might just be like her use of ornate details. That's not necessarily going to mean that like everything is going to have these intricacies. Like I was cleaning out my office and I saw the baby card you sent me when Zoe was born. And it was like, hello, baby. And it was very rounded and like plump and sweet. No one's going to look at it and be like, that's so Art Nouveau. But in some way, your style is still influenced by that. So like, that's probably a good example where maybe it was the muted colors, or maybe it was like the soft black. I don't know. You know, I'm not an expert, but I think you could say what elements. And so for me, the elements might be like simple, or maybe X, Y, and Z colors, or sharp line. You know, it could be like any of those things. And that is a huge box to fill in. You've got a lot of things you can experiment with in there. And on the other end of that, we also, and have probably said this before, when you are a brand new, fresh designer, or like just getting interested in it, you say like, well, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, I can do all these things. And yeah, you totally can. You can be designing for web, you can design branding, you can do art licensing, you can do all of those things. But when you say that in a sense that you can do all of those things in any style ever, like, no, ma'am. You can do them all within your humongous box that we just identified as your creative identity. And that's going to be true to you. Of course, you have like the skills to be able to do them in a different way, but that wouldn't be true to you. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it made all the sense. I think a huge thing too is we're always living in our own brains. So I've said this before. We think that we don't have like a unique way of perceiving the world. We're like, oh, this is the default way. This is the way I've always heard myself talk and engage with things. Well, surprise, not everybody thinks like you do. In fact, I can 100,000% guarantee that you think in a much more original way than you recognize. So again, when you come at something and you're like, I'm only going to be distinctive in my style if I do it in the same way as this master, or if I copy X, Y, and Z, like that's the only way I'm going to find a style because I'm not creative enough or my mind isn't unique enough just to put pen to paper and make something that nobody else ever would. Well, yeah, you are going to put pen to paper and make something that nobody else ever would because that's how human beings work. And maybe it's just down to like, oh, in my brain, I picture things from like usually characters are from the side angle. And so I always draw them like with a bit of dimension. Whereas the person next to me is like, that's funny because I always see things really flat. I always shade things. I'm just really graphic and flat with my color fills. There's so many different ways that we perceive the world, or we are like, okay, I'm making this decision, but you don't even realize you're making a decision. It's so ingrained in us that we're making creative choices all the time and we just don't see it.
If you think about like back in our school days when we would get an assignment, like write an essay on X, Y, and Z, no two people wrote the same essay.
Well,
like for years.
No, I
without copying or plagiarism,
right?
Or
yeah,
but like
totally.
out of their brain, nobody is going to write the exact same thing. Every lesson ever taught is you do it yourself. Even when you're like learning how to draw an A, you could draw an A 100 different ways. No two are going to be exact blueprints of each other. Even when Katie and I, who share the same values and morals, when we are like confronted with a problem in our business, we are going to have a different response to it. And we check in with ourselves, and it doesn't mean that they're like one's over here and one's over there. It just means that like together we can check ourselves and make sure we're on the same path, and like listen to each other's perspective to make sure we've gotten something really great. Or like when we're pricing, like in every capacity, you tell someone to come to your Halloween party wearing something orange, you're going to get a whole lot of different combinations. There's so many ways to do
And then
things.
I might show up wearing red.
No, well, that's true because you don't know the difference. No, I'm just kidding. But you will show up as Benjamin Franklin.
Oh yeah. Fun fact, every single Halloween for the past at least 5 years, my husband and I have shown up as two Benjamin Franklins.
Did you do it this year on Halloween?
We didn't do anything. We didn't go anywhere.
Because
we didn't eat a piece of candy. Yeah, no, we were very not in the spirit.
I'm not okay with the fact that you didn't have any candy.
Every other year other than that, it's like our party trick. We show up just as two Benjamin Franklins, and we like to dance as Benjamin Franklin, which is really fun. Yeah. Put that in my
get it.
use smoothie. Okay, one
What's
thing
that?
I want to address as well, because this is a big one, is the tension between where you are in your journey with like skill building as an artist and where you
Mm,
are with your taste and what you like. And that can a lot of times cause artists to get really frustrated, because if you are just in the beginning of your journey, gosh, I should probably find a different word other than journey, but I mean, it's a good one. The meaning is correct. It's just so overused. It sounds like I'm on The Bachelor.
I don't
But
watch
if
it,
you're,
so I don't know. Is
they,
that like the way that they talk about it?
oh, constantly. They are on a love
Mm,
journey. But yeah, so
okay.
at the beginning, and you're just starting and you're just learning these basic skills, but you see all this amazing artwork and you want to immediately be able to do those things and create the things that you can see in your head. And then when you can't, a lot of people stop there and they don't spend that time to put in the work in the skill building part. But a famous quote from Ira Glass or something about your. Are you looking it up right now?
Yes, I was like, wait, there's a famous quote. I think the general gist
Taste.
I remember is that when you have good taste, but you don't have the skill to implement it yet, it can be really frustrating. Like to be bad at something when you know what the final outcome you want to get is. And I feel like we're almost always in a situation like that because we always want to get better. And it's really hard to not be your own worst critic. And so just recognizing like the reason that I'm not fully pleased with this yet is because you have really good taste, and that is a huge piece of being a creative, or whatever field you're in, you are striving, and I think that's always going to help us on our trajectory. Did you find it?
I did. It's really long and it pretty much says what you said. So I think I'll let people look up that Ira Glass quote on their own. Just look up Ira Glass quote about taste. But yeah, the important point is that you have good taste and that you have a good eye. And I was watching Andy J. Pizza's Skillshare class on finding your style, and he talked about Gordon Ramsay, which I love because Gordon Ramsay and like just the world of celebrity chefs is one of my favorite things. That is in my you smoothie as well. And so I was really excited when he talked about Gordon Ramsay and how he looks for like a good up and coming chef. And he doesn't look for somebody who's already plating a perfect beef Wellington. He's looking for somebody who has a really good palate, because you can train all the other stuff. That other stuff is skill. But if you don't have a good palate to begin with, and you don't have a good eye and you don't have good taste, then that part is difficult to train. So when you do feel that tension, try to look at it from the positive of like, okay, I've got the potential. I can see what's good. I can tell what I like. Now I've got to bridge the gap and put in that hard work.
And that's like kind of the fun part, right? Is like I've got the pieces, I have to like put the puzzle together, or like you're a lot of the way there. One thing I do want to tangent on is Gordon Ramsay seems really scary.
That's his whole shtick. He isn't actually
Okay.
a scary dude, especially if you've only seen like Hell's Kitchen or things like that. He's very different. If you watch MasterChef Junior, especially when he deals with children, you can see what a good hearted human is. He just puts on a TV personality thing for like some of his more ridiculous reality TV shows, but he's actually a really good dude and he's really talented, in my opinion.
So something you should know that differentiates Katie and I is that she watches a lot of reality. Is that reality?
Yeah,
Reality
it's
TV.
real. They're really
And
cooking
the
most of the
only
time.
time I've seen a clip of Gordon Ramsay is because my computer monitor is actually a smart TV, and I don't know how to explain it other than that. And sometimes when I turn on my computer for the day, it goes to Hell's Kitchen instead of
That's
to my
weird.
computer,
Well,
like
that's
just Hell's
jarring.
Kitchen. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
what's
jarring first thing
happening?
in the morning. I'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I actually don't watch Hell's Kitchen. I don't like that show, but MasterChef, the whole series of MasterChefs are great. Yeah, I'm a fan.
I'm much more of a Great British Bake Off person.
Yeah, that is a very different vibe from
Yeah.
Hell's Kitchen. That's like night and day. They're
Yes.
like making
Also,
sticky toffee pudding and giving each other handshakes and being very
I
demure.
was really disappointed when I went to London that there wasn't more of the Great British Bake Off. And I asked three people, where is the Great British Bake Off? And they were like,
As
I
if
don't
you were going to
know.
happen upon the tent.
I knew it was like in the country, but I thought maybe we would like pass it on our 2 hour train ride or something. I mean, just like wishful thinking, and that I would pass bakeries from the people who were on the show, and that there would be like the window displays featuring all the things that I recognize from the show, which I wouldn't remember their names. I would just be like, that looks like something that would be on the show.
Yeah. Well,
But none of that. None of
as
that.
lovely as the environment that they're creating is and the feeling of watching Great British Bake Off, there's a lot of
Are you going to burst my bubble?
I'm just saying there's a lot of food that they make that does not sound good to me. And
It's
like there's a
also the
lot
food
of
that like,
dry things, and I am all about like give me a moist cake, give me a moist cookie.
stop saying
And
that. We're gonna get canceled.
moist. I just doubled down.
I actually knew you would do that. I knew you would say it. I can
You were
imagine now
goading
like
me.
a Instagram post of us, just you saying it 100 times.
Moist.
Go for it.
Moist.
Okay.
The most moist.
Okay, anyway, the other thing with the show, and then I promise I'll stop, is that a lot of the things people are like, I don't know, I've never heard of it. So that leads me to believe that those dishes that they're asked to make are dishes that aren't popular anymore there.
Yeah, but
So I wouldn't see them.
the whole thing with their cookies that are like snaps. They have made
They're
so
not
many kinds of
cookies.
snaps.
They're not cookies. They're a cracker. Okay? They're not a cookie. It doesn't have chocolate chips.
Is that the name of it?
Crackers?
Biscuit. There. Yeah.
Biscuits.
I was like, that's not it.
Yeah. No. Gross.
Okay,
anyway, I'm gluten-free, so I couldn't enjoy it anyway.
I want to take us back. Oh, unless you have something.
Mine's irrelevant. I was just going to talk about some of the random things that are in my smoothie, but I think they're really not important. You go for it.
Oh, it is important. It is absolutely important, but we can come back to that because I just want to make one more note for the people.
You mean the people were actually trying to help with this podcast? Okay.
Well,
I'll let you take this one.
I think it is helpful to hear us talk about what's in our smoothies. So I legitimately do want to come back to that. But just one more point on the evolution of your style. I have lunch with my dad every month, which is really sweet. Well, we have a lot of other lunches with our whole family, but just the two of us one-on-one. And so I asked him about because he's a musician and he's played with all these great orchestras. He plays timpani and is just this really impressive musician, but he's had a very long career. And I asked him about the evolution of his style as a musician. And he played in like these amazing orchestras and did a lot of classical music, mostly is what he did. And he told me that something that I really identified with, how my style evolved too, is that when he was younger, he was really, really rigid about playing exactly as the notes were written. And he learned things so rigidly and was like really just focusing on the skills and like getting all that stuff down. And then with maturity, the biggest thing that he learned was to take liberties when they're important and when they're appropriate, because the dynamics and the emotions of putting some of your artistic expression into the piece is what really, really brings it to life. And it's interesting because that confidence doesn't come until later usually. So we all tend to, I mean, I don't want to put this on everybody, but a lot of people that I've seen, and myself included, started out really rigid with our craft and just trying to learn exactly as it was on the page. And for me, this manifested in like, we didn't have an iPad to draw on when I was in school, and there were like tablets, but it wasn't like drawing directly on the tablet. At least I didn't have a fancy one like that. So I was doing a lot of vectoring, and that partially informs this, but also my sketches were so tight and like perfect. And I was so worried about having the lines be exactly right and have everything be so tight. And even my professor in my drawing one class came over and he was like, Katie, what are you doing? Because we had this whole still life in front of us and I had finished like an eighth of it. And I was just working in this. That was my inclination with no artistic training, was to go in and finish each section as I went. And he was like, no. You got to look at the whole and then you can start to put in the details. Like, calm down. But as I've grown older,
down, child.
For real. But as I've grown and matured and changed, I really, really appreciate the artist's hand in things, and the little mistakes and the wobbles and the textures are the most interesting parts to me. So those are things that I've started to reintroduce into my work over time. And yeah, I just wanted to point that out because if that's something that you're kind of seeing in your work, or like you're at a more point where you're being careful and you're just trying to do all the things, I think over time that you'll be able to loosen up and start to bring in those moments of expression and those dynamics. And it's just going to make your work so exciting to watch evolve.
So this is not a burn. I'm not roasting
Uh-oh.
you. I think this is really, really interesting. Your sketches are still tight as fuck. Well, I'm going somewhere with it. I promise. This is a compliment, but that's your skill. The detail oriented, the precision, that is just ingrained in you. And so you've gotten way better, but you like things that are crisp, but still have that handmade feel. And
Yeah.
so what you do, and I've seen you do this, is you intentionally go back and add those things.
Yeah.
And so that's not wrong. Not everyone can have a quick, messy sketch and understand it in their brain and whatever. Like, I get what it's going to look like. Let's move on. But you've recognized in yourself that, like, okay, this is exactly what I want it to look like. And then you know how to go back in and literally erase parts of it to add that human touch. And it turns out perfectly. And it doesn't matter how you get to that end result, whether it's on your first try or your 100th try, or you've redrawn it a billion times. That's just like who you are. And I think that's amazing. And it adds so much personality, adds so much intention behind your work, which is the really important piece. And it's interesting because my freshman year roommate, who I adored, I haven't talked to in like 800 years. I'm going off of one Facebook post I saw 10 years ago. She could draw anything exactly as it looked. She drew a marble and I could literally grab it off the page, and like took her an hour. I drew a shitty bottle sitting on our desk and it took me 10 hours all night, first night of school, all night, and it looked like shit. Not realistic, whatever. That was 100% skill. And when it came to, like you were saying with your dad, when it came time where she had all the skill and the like knowledge to be able to infuse her own style into it, I'm not sure she was that interested. She didn't go into a creative field. Maybe she does it on the side. Again, like I haven't talked to her in so long. I should reach out, note to self. But that's sort of, once you've learned, you can figure out, do I want to break the rules? How do I want to infuse my personality? Does this interest me? Or is this just something I'm good at? Like, you can be really good at something and not be passionate about it. Or you can be really shitty at something and want to be really good at it. And that's all part of what goes into your creative voice. Like with you, Katie, like your sketches and your work is just really tight. You're not going to put something out there that you aren't happy with. You're going to keep going until it looks the way in your head you want it to look. And it's awesome because when I'm working with you and you show me a sketch, I know exactly what the end product is going to look like. Whereas I show you a sketch and you're like, is this English? I don't know. It's just a bunch of lines. And that's fine because my brain gets it. But it's that like intention and that curiosity and that experimentation of, okay, I have the layout, but I want to go and I want to take it to the next level and make it my own and add these really nuanced pieces to it that really identify your work. And so I think it's really fitting that you would have started in a corner and tried to make it exactly what you wanted before moving on to the next thing. That made sense to you.
No, it was like the most me thing I've ever done in my life. That it was a little ridiculous. And also it's funny because you were like, oh, I work so fast. And I was like, I'm working faster than everybody else. Am I doing something like differently? And I was always the last person to be done with everything in my life. I mean, not like I would procrastinate. I would be working the entire time. I just took all the time to do the work because I was so obsessed about getting it to the place that I wanted it to be or whatever. And that for me was a lot more detailed of a place that I wanted to end up at than you want to.
Yeah. Well, and I worked really hard, but once I found the area where I was good at, I don't in college probably didn't work as fast. Like when I work with clients, I also am really good at productivity for myself. Like if I say I'm going to do something in 2 weeks, I'm like, it's done in 1 week. It's not always a skill. Sometimes it's really annoying. But it's funny because we did self-portraits and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I left my face blank. Or no, I left my hair blank. I left myself bald and I made up a ridiculous excuse because I couldn't fucking do my hair. I could not.
You're like, it has
hair.
deep meaning.
It did, but it was stupid. And I couldn't get it right. And I was like, at the time, under the influence of thinking that if you're going to be an artist, you need to draw things realistically. I was a freshman in art school and that was what I was being preached. I didn't see anyone with like style. I only saw people who could draw things exactly the way they appeared. And I cannot. That's never been my skill. And I think that idea that we're taught in school or somewhere is so toxic because it really like erases that creative approach. And like my husband can draw the cutest squirrel I've ever seen, or beaver. I don't know, whatever it is. I think it's a beaver.
He's got like
And
a
I'm so
party
glad that
trick.
he does. And it's just so cute. And I'm so glad that he can just draw this tiny little thing and he can just pick up a crayon and draw it with the kids. A lot of people just feel the pressure of like, well, if I pick this up, it has to be perfect. Or like, I'm an artist, I should do a really good job. No, just that approach is so toxic. And I feel like we
Yeah.
have spilled that over to social media too. It's like, if it's not perfect or if it's not finished, it's not good enough. Hate
It's
that.
so funny because I do totally think that I'm an artist, but seeing myself try to draw something from memory is the most hilarious thing because I suck at it.
Like Pictionary? No, I'm not doing it.
No, I actually have learned to like embrace the suck or just
Hmm.
appreciate that. And you can make, like I said earlier, where you can see where your weaknesses are and turn them into strengths. Well, like when I was at Letter West retreat and Mary Kate McDevitt was there doing a workshop
Oh,
with
you told me
us.
this. I love it.
Yeah, the first thing she had everybody do was like think of an animal, and then we had to draw, like fill up a whole page of doodles of that animal without being allowed to reference anything. So we had to do it just from our memory, and she was like, let it be wonky, let it be weird, embrace that. And she herself was like drawing a horse from memory on the whiteboard, and it was the most charming, quirky, bizarre, flattened, grotesque horse I've ever seen. But it was so perfect and charming and in its own weird way because she hadn't tried to make it look realistic and because she hadn't referenced anything. So that definitely was like a big moment in that clicked for my brain that was like, hey, I'm not good at this. I don't have a very clear image of what a horse looks like in my head. In fact, it's like kind of a shadowy nothing when I think about a horse right now. Granted, when I see a horse, I can
You
draw
know
it.
it's a horse.
Well, yeah, that too. I can
I'm
draw
trying to
stuff when
draw
I
one right
have
now.
references. Yes, please. Let's
I'm,
put it
I'm
in the
literally, no,
let's
absolutely
put it
not.
on
That's like
stories.
my literal,
This
I
is
don't know if
part
it's
of
an,
the exercise. We got to
I
loosen
know.
up.
I'm going to fill a page though. I'm going to do this for myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a people and horses thing. Cause like you could ask me to draw pretty much anything else and I'll be like, oh, okay, sure. But when it comes to the, what is it, inanimate? No,
Anatomy.
that's backwards.
Anatomy.
No, inanimate is what I said. Like a animal or a person, I'm like, absolutely not. That's far beyond my skill with a Bachelor of Fine Art. I can't do that. But most of it is that fear or that like inability to like tap into that childlike wonder of just putting it on the page. But I'll write something, no problem.
We're sadly going to have to wrap this up in a second, which I mean, we should write a book about this or something because I feel like we have a lot
Do
to
you
say.
wanna?
Yeah. Why don't we?
Let's
20,
try it.
25 people. Get
So
ready.
crazy.
We're so excited. We're going to be sharing the behind the scenes as we go. But I want to leave you with one really fun exercise to do just on this vein. It's not necessarily, I think the one we just talked about is a great exercise to do as far as actually being very applicable to your style and finding your style. So, yeah, go ahead and do that one. That's exercise number 1. Fill up a page with doodles of an animal, and you're not allowed to reference, and it's got to be the same animal, and you've got to show it in like a lot of different ways or different positions or whatever. And then your second task is something that my husband and I did together, and it was like the most fun, and we were dying laughing and crying, and it was amazing. So we tried to draw, we each like had our own sketchbooks facing ourselves and the other person couldn't see, and we were like, okay, draw Eeyore from memory. And so we
You
each
can't. What's Eeyore? Oh my gosh.
we each had
I'm
that
just,
was his favorite one of mine because it was, I didn't even remember he was a donkey. It was like a nonsense creature, but he did look very sad. But anyway, give yourself like a timer for a minute or 2 minutes and then pull it up on your phone and each reveal what you created. That's the recipe for a good night, let me tell you. And just keep doing that with all sorts of characters or animals or just like things that everybody sees all the time in their lives, but then when you actually try to remember what it looks like, it comes out amazing.
I want my prompts to be like, draw a cash register, draw a living room, draw
That's so
a glass
boring.
with an apple. You know what? What your boring is my fun. Okay. Don't poo poo on my fun.
Okay, go draw your living room. Go draw a
I'm
cash
going
register.
to.
I'm not going to stop you. Draw your
My
cash
daughter just got
register.
My 3-year-old just got like a Barbie cash register, so
Oh, that's fun.
I will draw it.
Okay, so you got to go do those tasks. Go draw Eeyore without
or a cash register, whichever one floats your boat.
Yeah, it's all about floating your boat, and we are looking for something that's authentic to you at the end of all of this. I hope this was helpful. You can definitely keep out an eye for more on this because, again, we are going on a 2-year journey of writing a book about this very topic. So if you have other stuff that's related to this that you want to hear our answers to or our perspectives on, or if you have some perspectives that have helped you, please let us know. Get all up in our DMs. And oh, yeah, review us, by the way. We never ask for reviews. We got to ask for reviews. We got to push it.
Give us reviews, please.
Yeah, please
and
review us on Apple Podcasts
yeah.
and on Spotify and on Google, and tell your mom.
Tell your mom, please. And also let us know who you want to hear on the show next or what topics you want us to cover. Just send us an email. Would love to keep gabbing in your ears.
All right. Go out there and make your smoothies.
Draw a horse.
Make your smoothies and draw your horses. All right. All good things.
All good things. Bye.